It's official. You're in the green room for episode number 366, and we're here live at DisrupTV. I'm broadcasting live from the SFO airport, and I don't know where my co-host Vala is, but he looks in a very happy, comfortable space. But, you know, we'll welcome our guests. This is the green room where we introduce everybody in reverse order, and more importantly, we get a chance to kind of get everything settled, get everything comfortable, and of course, we will then kick off the show. So, coming in reverse order, Michael, where are you coming in from, and what are we talking about today?
I'm Mike Norton. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School, and I wrote a book on rituals, the role that rituals play in our lives in general, like with our kids and our spouses, but also the role they play at work and our teams and in helping us get done what we're trying to get done.
Excellent. This show is a ritual in itself. We're on episode number 366. Alex, where are you coming in from, and what are we talking about today?
Valerie, thank you for having me here. I'm giving a call from the Silicon Valley, and the book that I co-authored with a Stanford professor, Ilya Strobel, called Venture Mindset. What we all can learn from venture capitalists in the way they make bets and create and build new unicorns, and how we can all implement that in our everyday important decisions.
Very cool. And we'll talk to Titan himself. Dom, where are we coming in from? What are we talking about?
I'm calling in from Boston, Dominic Rizzo. I am going to be, I'm the founder of zeroRISC, and before that, the OpenTitan project, world's first open source secure silicon chip. I'm going to be talking a bit about that and its utility and impact on bringing security into the supply chain, leading to more secure devices overall.
No, much needed. We've been doing privacy by accident instead of privacy and security by design. Really looking forward to that segment. Okay, with that, back to our amazing producer, Elle. We can kick it off and we'll get ready to start the show.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on X at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests your questions live, and we'll do our best to answer them. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I see Ray on TV just about every day, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Bloomberg. He's one of the top futurists to follow on X, RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with Vala Afshar, the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of multiple books, but the top books right now is Boundless, a mindset for unlimited business success, and a #1 seller on Amazon. Well, executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational, insightful tweets, but more importantly, you can find him leading or speaking events at Salesforce and other venues, and more importantly, you can read about what he's looking at and what his insights are on ZDNet. With that, we have an amazing set of guests. Vala, who do we have to kick it off today?
It's our pleasure to have Dominic Rizzo, who's the founder CEO of zeroRISC, risk-free startup focused on creating trust in supply chain on an OpenTitan's secure silicon ecosystem. Dominic founded OpenTitan Project, the first open source hardware root of trust. The robust coalition of partners recently brought the first commercially relevant OpenTitan-based chipset to fruition, enabling more transparent, trustworthy computing foundation for all. Founded in 2023, comprised of the original OpenTitan project team members from Google, including Dominic, who serves as the CEO of zeroRISC. Companies focus on, again, providing first commercial cloud security service built on the OpenTitan open source silicon root of trust project that delivers transparency and reliability for data centers, OTT, ICS, and IoT technology, Internet of Things technologies, and automotive. The zeroRISC platform is the only all-in-one drop-in silicon software and service solution that delivers trustworthy cloud-based secure device management below an operating system while making secure ownership transfer straightforward. Welcome, Dominic, or Dom, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Really, really appreciate it. So
great to have
Hey,
you.
Dom, I'm really excited to have you here. One of the reasons is I geek out on security, right? And I was looking at OpenTitan, and the universal second factor security key thing was the part that got me all excited, because it's been a while. We haven't seen this level of security by design, as we hinted earlier. How does a transparent open source secure by design approach to chip design help us with security, especially given we're up against all these proprietary models today, and now we finally have an open source alternative?
yeah, well, it helps in a couple of ways. And I guess one thing, you mentioned the universal, the U2F fobs, the security keys. Absolutely great use case, really, really critical for identity security. And the first chip can actually implement that in a single chip solution.
It's like FIDO Alliance in a chip. I mean, it's awesome,
Exactly. And I think another thing, which is relatively recent, is it's just been announced that Chromebook is actually adopting this as their silicon root of trust technology, this chip that this coalition of partners has come together to really produce. So, in the coming years, you can look forward to a major consumer device actually having open source secure silicon technology in it. So the sort of transparency, the secure by design aspect, I mean, we want to step back a second and say that, what makes something secure is a focus on security, is really thinking about it from the start, thinking about it from the design time all the way through production and adoption. So being open source, being proprietary, one is neither necessarily more or less secure than the other. But what transparency gives you is transparency gives you a means to build trust, right? It's great if people trust us. It's better if they don't have to. It's better if they can verify it for themselves. So that's I think, a really, really important aspect to it. And then having it be also, silicon proven, so of very high quality, and under a permissive Apache license, as this design is, incentivizes adoption, it really lowers the cost to include this kind of core technology into designs from the very, very start, right? So it both gives you a reason to believe in it and greases the skids to actually get it into the real world where it can have impact, as it's going to, with U2F, with security keys, with inclusion in Chromebooks, things like that.
Can you explain the significance of ensuring silicon security or security by design approach that you talk of, independent of the product's path through the supply chain? And assume that we don't have all security experts that are listening. If you could provide some background as to the importance of secure by design and the impact in terms of the entire supply chain, value chain.
Yeah, well, the way you want to think about something like a root of trust, a silicon security chip, is it gives you the ability to get, quote unquote, get back to good from any state, right? The OS can be completely overrun with, vulnerabilities, with exploits, but having this rooted in silicon that is below the operating system, below even the firmware, always gives you the ability to get back to a known good state, which means that you can update to an even better state. So, I mentioned some of the current people who are adopting this. Now, obviously, what zeroRISC, or one of the things zeroRISC is really focusing on, is bringing this technology to everyone else who does not have, huge support engineering staff, the ability to integrate this. And so if you take something like operational technology, industrial IoT, whatever you want to call it, where it's really, really important that these basically that they're always on, that they're always, they schedule maintenance, right? You can't just take down an oil refinery or a chemical plant or whatever it is, right? Just because you need to update something that has a critical vulnerability. So you've got basically a window where you have to kind of accept that.
Mhm.
But what having a silicon root trust, what having something like OpenTitan in one of those systems does, is it gives you the ability to, when it's time to do the maintenance, when it's time to do all the updates, to do that in a way where, regardless of what might have happened in the past, you know you're in a known good state. You know that you can get to the next kind of improved, updated good state. Does that kind of clarify?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. And the
All
more.
right.
Go ahead. Ray.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
I say when you were sitting at the Jorgensen Library looking at the birthday cake, thinking about what security issues might pop up in the future, I mean, did you ever imagine that we would be in a world with this much risk and vulnerability because our silicon supply chain sucks? I mean, because we've been trying to solve these problems forever. Like, what did China do? They basically put a great firewall up, right? And they're like, okay, we'll shut everyone down. You can't come in. I'm like, we're like open systems, open societies, no borders. Like, the internet is everywhere, and we had no means of protecting ourselves. I mean, could you have imagined that? I mean, what are we doing to fix all that? So,
are you asking how worried am I and how long have I been worried for?
Yes, exactly.
I had a full head of hair when I started this, and it's only been about a year. So
that's a life of a CEO, no matter what industry you're in.
We're going to go back here later. I want to know what your prank at Caltech was later, but we'll get back to that later.
Yeah, it's been a while, but just did my 20th anniversary of MIT too, so it's been a while. But anyway, so I've been thinking about this stuff for a very long time. So I actually worked very early on when I was an undergraduate with a fellow named Andrew Bunny Huang. He just goes by Bunny, and he did very early work on basically sort of white hat hacking of Xbox. Turns out one of the places where we actually see a lot of adoption of secure silicon technology is in video game consoles. Some of the absolute best implementations in the world, right? And kind of being mentored by someone like Bunny, I got a very good sense very early on of, oh, it's in pretty bad shape, right? And it's not malicious, it's not neglect, it's nothing like that. It's a couple things. It's very specialized knowledge. It's an insecure system that doesn't get attacked looks an awful lot like a secure system that does get attacked. Like, you kind of don't know if it's secure or not. You really have no way of knowing. So it can be very difficult to convince people of the importance of adopting some of these technologies if nothing bad has happened. But if something bad happens, it's almost too late at that point, right? So you kind of adopt a better safe than sorry attitude. And one of the reasons this was done in the open source, why OpenTitan was done in the open source, is because of a concern of, the barrier to adoption into silicon is huge. It's a very schedule-driven, very, very schedule-driven industry. It's fairly strict in how things are built because it has to work, because you kind of only get to compile it once, if that makes sense, of like everything leads up to a tape out, and then if it's good or bad 3 months later when the chips come back. So what that really did is put us in the mindset of, okay, if we really want to improve the state of security, starting at the very, very, very beginning of the supply chain, we need to make it high quality. We need to make it transparent. We need to make it standards compliant. We need to make it something that you want to adopt, right? And that doesn't necessarily cost you much to adopt. And so that's kind of where philosophically, like, there's a reason that OpenTitan has succeeded as an open source silicon project. It's not the first open source silicon project. It's the first that's made it into widespread commercial production and adoption into consumer brands, essentially. And it's because, I've been thinking about this for 20 years, since I was an undergraduate, watching people very effectively, very, very intelligent people, but, really tear down a system from the very, very basics, and realizing how important it is to bake this stuff in from the beginning, and how important it is to make it easy to adopt. That's really, really key, right? Like, if you really want to make the world a more secure place, you can't make it a challenge to get to that point.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You mentioned Xbox, you mentioned consumer electronics. What other ways can you share with us, taking hack-resistant chips and their impact on other industries beyond consumer electronics?
I spend a lot of time thinking about like the operational technology that runs our critical infrastructure. And, I've recently come across, there's a ton of companies who kind of do the signals analysis, and they do it very effectively. They kind of, they know what's happened after an attack. They can do some remediation. But I've come across this phrase recently, which really applies to the actual SCADA devices, PLCs, even some of the servers and stuff that actually run critical infrastructure. And the phrase they use is they kind of consider that security of those devices, those platforms, to be a quote unquote post-sale problem, which is, you kind of think about it and you think back in the automotive industry, like even before there were lemon laws and before there were warranty guarantees and stuff like that, it's kind of the equivalent of saying, well, we're so sorry that muffler fell off, but that's a post-sale problem, right? Like that's your responsibility. So it's an externalization of costs, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really spending a lot of my time these days thinking about the impact that we can have in providing these core guarantees into that critical infrastructure arena. In particular, it's, I look at this and I'm like, this is not a post-sale problem. This is a supply chain security problem. This starts from having platforms that we know have been assembled in a testable, authentic, verifiable integrity way, and then carrying those guarantees forward, when they're deployed, when they're being actively managed, when they're out in the field. So it's post-sale is too late, right?
Yeah.
It's fundamentally insecure by design at that point, and you're never going to be able to get back to a happy place.
And Don, these conversations are with CISOs, with chief security officers, CIOs. Has security been such a high priority for so long that the conversation is beyond the technical stakeholders? Who do you have to convince in terms of line of business leaders in order to understand secure by design approach is a must-have, not a nice-to-have?
Well, you see it, yes. So yes, it's CISOs, especially in the platform operators. So you think of like, power companies or gas companies or things like that, right? That's where you really see the awareness. So it tends to be in more regulated industries because real consequences, right? Like regulatory costs can be pretty significant. Recovery costs can be very significant. These are kind of direct first tier indirect costs, but then there's risk to life and limb too. So these things get pretty serious pretty quickly. And then of course the other half of that is conversations with OEMs, with the people who are actually manufacturing these devices, and helping them see how this is good for their brand. This is good for being able to sell regulatory compliant things out of the box. And it's not necessarily a huge cost to them to adopt this posture, right? It's about, you can't wait until it's too late, right? There's a reason cybersecurity insurance premiums are skyrocketing. It's because it really is that big of a risk, right? And
so it's Willie Sutton rule, right? You go where the money is, and cybersecurity. I mean, that's why people are stealing stuff. So
yeah, that's right.
But hey, related to that, I mean, is this going to be a consumer-driven approach, where people are going to ask for this, or is it going to have to come through the heavy hand of regulation?
I don't think it's going to necessarily come through the heavy hand of regulation. I kind of view that as a bit of a tailwind. I think it's more about risk and certainty and controllability of these processes and platforms, right? When we talk about like critical infrastructure. Now, I think it's really important to also realize that there's a lot of utility in having a trustworthy, secure enclave. Apple's a great example, right? I can pay for my groceries with my watch. I can pay with my phone. I can buy media on my Apple laptop. The reason I can do that is because they have a secure enclave, a very, very high quality secure enclave, certification ready, that exists across every single platform they sell, right? And so you kind of, you think about it, it's like, well, we're hooking all this stuff up to the internet, right? Like I hook my coffee machine up to the internet, and then I go through my coffee pods, and then why on earth can't that order me a new set, right? We're hooking things up to the internet, and those things are wildly insecure, which is a bit offensive. But also, I can't buy things on the internet with them, which is, I don't know what else the internet is for. So it's got a broader impact than just safety, security, management, right? There's just layers and layers and layers of what you can do when you have that one trustworthy, enclave everywhere.
Oh, this is amazing. We're here with Dom Rizzo, ex-Google leader and founder of Google's OpenTitan project, one of the most secure of trust models that are out there in the open source world, and of course, and founder and CEO of zeroRISC. You're building that stuff for folks. You can't find them on X, but more importantly, you can find them here on DisrupTV. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Yeah, great having you.
Take care. I'll try to catch up with you.
When anything that can connect will connect, and where 99% of call center inquiries in the future will be machine sourced, it's important to have those securities built in. It's our privilege to have our next guest. Alex Dang is the CEO and senior technology executive and an advisor on technology and innovation. He's the co-author of The Venture Mindset, How to Make Smarter Bets and Achieve Extraordinary Growth. Alex has 2 decades of senior leadership as a partner at McKinsey and Ernst Young, and as a product leader at Amazon, where he designed and launched numerous new businesses and solutions for millions of customers across e-commerce, supply chain, and artificial intelligence. In fact, Alex experienced the venture mindset firsthand at Amazon and AWS, where as a product leader, he designed and launched numerous new businesses and solutions for, again, millions of consumers across all these various capabilities and industries. Alex has worked with established organizations to imagine, build, and scale new businesses, from launching online sales channels and data as a service solutions to reimagining healthcare services and driving large-scale digital transformation programs. Welcome, Alex, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Vala. Thank you, Ray. Too many kind words, I have to admit.
I had to shorten your bio. We only have 20 minutes, and you've done a lot. Welcome.
Well, hey, welcome to the show. And I think really enjoyed the book. I had a chance to look at it. And you kick off the book with a conversation about SASB. Let's start there, because that is the venture mindset that you're talking about. And it's the epitome of that, really talking about like how people view the world. So
totally
share
right.
with us like kind of that lesson on that.
Yeah, that's an amazing story about, just imagine, you see a startup with a bunch of engineers, primarily located in China. A former executive of Cisco is proposing you to launch a new solution, which will be managing all the teleconferencing. The challenge with the wrinkle is that Google already exists. We all use Skype. We're pretty familiar with WebEx solution. So why would you ever invest in such a startup or a new idea called SASB with no paying clients at that time? The challenge for any single investor would be say, hey, this is a no-go by any means. At the same time, there is a set of investors, which are venture capitalists, who do know how to make bets on some kind of pretty cool companies. And SASB turned out to be a zoo. So the one that we regularly used during COVID times, and I regularly use for all my advisory phone calls and teleconferencing calls. So this is the idea behind the book, is that there is a different mindset that venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley and globally have. And that mindset, 9 principles that we found and outlined in our book with Stanford professor Ilya Strebelov, that the same mindset should be applied by many other decision makers across traditional organizations, and to be honest, in our daily lives as well. This is why we decided to write this book, is to share these lessons from trenches, from VCs, how they pick such ideas, where do they find and how do they fund such ideas, and how to build more unicorns and great products that we're all enjoying, like Uber, Apple Watch, and many other.
I'd like to take advantage of your insights. I've been getting recently calls on a not daily, but certainly weekly basis of folks that I know and I admire who have lost their jobs. They've been unfortunately affected by cost cutting and reductions, and So when I look at the subtitle of Making Smarter Bets and Achieving Extraordinary Growth, what advice can I give to my friends and former colleagues in terms of how they can find better, more suited jobs applying the venture mindset?
So Vala, thank you so much for this question, because we're all surrounded by people who are affected by, first of all, to some extent, job cuts as well as optimization. And trust me, we'll see more just because AI wave is here to stay, meaning that some people would continue to lose their jobs and they have to find a new niche or a new area to apply their skills. My first piece of advice and suggestion is that the same mental model that you normally apply when you have a job and when you look for a new one are two completely different ways of thinking. You cannot just rely on your routine that you used to have as you're searching for a new opportunity or a new job or a new gig. And our suggestion is to apply the venture mindset. You have time, resources, energy. Why not to make multiple bets? So think of a portfolio venture capital fund. They typically have up to 20 different bets. Some of them would fail. Actually, up to 70, 80% of them would fail. Maybe 10 to 20% will return you average returns, which will not be acceptable by VC scale. And only one will become your home run. And that home run would generate 10x to 100x return. And the whole battle is for that 100x return. In your career, you can apply the same principle. You can make multiple different bets. You can start a side consulting project or a side gig. You may start writing a book. You may start a blog or a new DisrupTV V2. And then one of these bets may become a home run, like DisrupTV, that will attract lots of viewership. So this is the way to manage your career, we believe, when the uncertainty is high. When the uncertainty is low, it's way easier. Just update your resume, you submit that CV to a well-known network. But that is completely different when the situation around you is tough or uncertain.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you.
That's a great point, right? And I think, I mean, when we look at the different, like the 9 chapters in your book that you cover, and each one of those rules, I mean, it's a clear, I mean, you provide a clear approach for everyone to figure out what they need to do. And you have do's and don'ts. The chapter I really liked was say no 100 times, right? And the point that you're talking about here is like, forget FOMO, build a large pipeline. Tell me more about that. Why do I need 100 at-bats? What's going on here? Like, why is the 100 number so important?
Yeah. And Ray, you're giving a call from SFO, meaning that you're very familiar with the standard so-called deal funnel. And Professor Strebel actually looked inside the deal funnel to understand how many deals average VC will have to review and look at in order to land a single one that will become one of those 20 that I just mentioned. So in the number is 101. That's the average number. It means that for 100 opportunities, VC will have to say no to. And that's a ridiculously high number. If you compare it to any opportunities or ideas that or innovative thoughts that comes to your mind, do you regularly say no to 100 ideas prior to finding the one that will actually become a potential unicorn? Still a potential. So when you look at go ahead.
I was on a call with someone who said that the whole year he went by, he only had 3 deals. There were only 3 deals he could find that were differentiated in this AI world. He felt everything else could be replicated. Right. So think about that. Like just 3 out of probably 8 meetings a day. I mean, that's crazy. So.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I had a chance and still have a chance to work with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies as a former McKinsey partner. Now I'm a senior advisor with the firm. It's the same kind of setup that normally you would just review 3, maybe 5, max 10 opportunities. In reality, you have to increase the size of your funnel prior to picking the future winner, or to find your, let's apply Amazon experience, AWS, or a new growth engine that will become your profit engine to some extent, or new robotic solution. And the challenge here is that for the top part of the funnel, when you have and review 100 deals, you have to apply so-called fast lane mindset, meaning that you have to just find a reason why not to invest in the idea, why not to spend time on that career opportunity or new gig or new idea. And that way you will filter out 90% of ideas that will come to you. But for the second part of the funnel, you have to immediately switch gears. You have to switch to a slow mode and start doing the proper due diligence. Start putting together a plan, giving calls and reference calls to customers or to current employees to figure out, is it the right career opportunity? Is it the right investment opportunity? Is it the right venture deal? That's where the slow mode starts to play a bigger role. That's the way to cut from 100 deals to one deal.
Can we apply some of the slow mode, fast mode theory to investments in innovation during hard times? So not only individuals are impacted by jobs or job losses, there's a tendency for companies to slow down investments in innovation during difficult times, times of uncertainty. How can we apply the growth mindset when it comes to rationalizing our innovation roadmap and investing in people and technology and processes that can help future-proof our growth potential moving forward?
Totally, Val, I love this future-proof model. I think that's the key. If you think about venture capitalists, they are very patient investors. You would never think about them as patient investors, but they are, because they have to wait for 8 to 10 to 12 years after their first seed stage Series A investment till the very end when they can IPO the company or the company is acquired. So therefore, that's why many VCs would to some extent ignore economic cycles. Of course, they're aware. Of course, interest rate will impact them. Of course, the economic conditions will have a significant impact. But they do know that their time horizon is not limited to 2-3 years. Their time horizon is 5, 7, 10 years. Interestingly enough, that's the same approach that Jeff Bezos popularized within Amazon and many other technology, by the way, venture-backed companies also use as a way to plan ahead. So patience and thinking long is a critical skill set. And therefore, to speed up things, to some extent, you have to slow down things and rethink that, hey, with a horizon of 5, 7, 10 years, would you still make this investment? Or would you pass? Is this a potential Google? Because the risk of missing a Google, to some extent, is way higher than making a wrong bet in a particular moment in time. So this is the approach, and this is the chapter that we wrote about that. It's the 9th chapter and 9th principle, thinking long and demonstrate patience with innovative ideas.
Yeah, and you say avoid short-termism, and I think that's really, really important, right? You ride the trend and then realize it's not a trend. Like, what happened to the metaverse? Like, whoa, what happened there, right? But it could be coming back on the long-term round, and you just don't know. And so people don't often take the long view, which is an important piece of really trying to understand how to think like a venture folks. So, quick question. What's the one question VCs ask that will change the way you evaluate opportunities? Like, what is that? What's that one? I mean, it's really hard to break it down to one, but what's the one that you suggest?
So we suggest to constantly ask yourself, what is the reason not to invest? And this question is to some extent
not to invest.
Not to invest. And the reason for that is coming back to the discussion about the funnel, that you will have to say no 100 times. Therefore, you cannot spend hours and hours, days and weeks reviewing a particular idea. You have to, in a particular moment in time, cut losses and go ahead and think about the next idea just to make sure that you have enough time and enough energy to review 101 deals, to find the one that will actually work. So the reason why you have to ask this not to invest question is that what we've learned from not just venture capitalists, but actually from Shark Tank and from other very similar shows, that experienced investors, they use so-called red flag approach, meaning that they're looking for a critical flaw, and that's just enough to reject the deal or reject the idea. And that critical flaw approach or red flags and these specific criteria is coming typically from your experience. So therefore, you train your mind or prepare your mind by talking to many, say, startups in a particular space. And then you can rely on your brain, you can rely on your experience to reject some particular share of those to make sure that you have enough time and lots of time to conduct a proper due diligence for the ones that you start to believe in. And then you have to convince what makes you so excited about this idea. But that's a whole separate discussion.
Okay, so we talked about the importance of long-term planning and long-term thinking and having patience. We talked about the importance of focusing on the right investment, which means you keep a to-don't list and a to-do list, and that guides you in terms of your precision in the companies you do invest. Okay, now you've made the investment, you realize, okay, it didn't work out as well as you thought. How crucial is it for a growth or venture mindset to be able to pull the plug and ultimately, decide I was wrong, I need to move on? How do you do that? What's the question you ask yourself when that's the inflection point that you're faced with?
Vala, thank you so much for this question, because I wholeheartedly believe that to make sure that you make risky bets, you should have some mechanisms to protect you from huge losses. And the way to do so is to use the principle double down or quit, meaning that you start small, then you scale fast. Think about venture capitalists. How do they make investment? They make investment in series or in tranches. They start with seed stage, then they go to Series A, then Series B, then Series C, meaning that they collect more information. And for the ones that they find promising, they double down. For the ones that are not performing well, they actually have to cut losses. Otherwise, you will have a big portfolio of loss-making opportunities, meaning that you may not have enough capital, energy, time, management to actually navigate it all. I personally applied this rule as we've been writing this book and promoting this book. I mean, now it's a national bestseller, but together we had to experiment a lot with so many different things, from Amazon ads to direct outreach to some PR activities. And some of them failed and some of them succeeded. And the ones that succeeded, of course, we started to double down on those. But that's the whole kind of a lab approach, kind of an experimentation machine mental model that you have to explore, because that's the very first book we've ever written and we do not know what to expect. So run experiments. That's my only piece of advice. And then double down on the winners and quit the losers, even though it's going to be very hard to quit. You have to be remembering it's sunk cost. You should forget about that at this stage.
I love that advice. Ray, you're on mute.
I was going to say, saying no is not easy to do. It's really hard. But one of the interesting things in your book is one chapter, which I think will drive people a little batty if they're not from the West Coast. Bet on people, not process. I think that's one of the chapters, if I remember. Why people, not the process? Because we're used to, in a corporate environment, of betting on process, ensure consistency, standardization, a certain outcome. And you're like, no, let's bet on the people. And you're very adamant about that in that chapter.
Yeah, and Ray, we just follow. So we collected information and data from VCs, because venture capitalists, that's kind of a common knowledge in Silicon Valley, that jockey or people do meta, and there are so many books written about that. But how important? What we realize and what we learned, that's the most important factor for all successful stories as well as failures, meaning that if they started up or idea fail, the primary reason is typically about the team. Why is that the case? First of all, if you think about the very seed stage idea, very early stage idea, normally you do not know what would work. The idea that will be presented in the very beginning, half a year from that moment, would be completely different. Or they use the word, or we all use the word pivot, or change the direction. And who would change the direction? It would be the team that would have to solve all these problems on the way. So it is all about the founder and the founding team to solve all these problems on the way. Coming back to your question, processes do matter a lot. And I've consulted too many companies in my life that I insisted that you need very well-defined processes. The challenge here is that in situations when uncertainty is high, when risk is high, when you do not know what to expect, when you deal with innovative stuff, you need a different approach, because processes may not save you from these failures or challenges. You need a team to help you to navigate all these problem-solving techniques and things that you will face going forward. This is why we recommend, for early stage ideas, for innovative stuff, bet on
Start with good people,
not the horse.
Start with good people.
Alex, my last question. If there's one word that can describe the venture mindset, I mean, you just talked about failure, you talked about patience and long-term thinking. The word that comes to my mind is resilience. The words that come to my mind are optimism, The words that come to my mind are being self-aware, understanding context around you so you can make informed decision as quickly as real time as possible. Humility, beginner's mindset. Is there a word that embodies a venture mindset? And when you are consulting with the top CEOs of these great companies that you're a trusted advisor to, how quickly can you tell whether they have a venture mindset or not? You have the ability to, within the first few minutes or the first meeting, realize, okay, I got a lot of work to do because they don't have a venture mindset.
Yeah. So Vala, the easiest test that how many failures have you had in the past 1 year, 2 years? And if the answer is we don't have failures, we're a failure resilient company. Well, I guess that you either as a company do not take enough risks and therefore you miss so many opportunities, or, well, probably you are that unique a company that I would love to study more. Unfortunately, I think the challenge is that the former is way more kind of common among companies. So if I had to pick one word, I would pick the word risk. You have to take more risks in your personal life, careers, as larger organizations, but in a smart way. If you just make a bet far, then your chances of a loss are very high. You have to do this in the proper way. And what we realize that we can learn about that proper way, or the right set of mental models, the right set of mechanisms from people who are doing this regularly, who are doing that for a living. These are venture capitalists. That's why we decided to put together this book and outline these principles, which I think could be applied, again, not just for VCs, but also for larger organizations, startups, as well as in our personal life, in our business career decisions.
That's great. That's a great answer. Thank you, Alex. That's great.
Well, we're back with Alex Stan, CEO, Senior Technology Executive, and Advisor on Technology Innovation, co-author of The Venture Mindset. He was also a Sloan Fellow at GSB. If anybody knows what that means a lot. So congratulations, and thank you for having the book out here. Came out May 21st. So please check out the book. It is an amazing book on helping you think like a venture mindset.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Congrats on the book. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have to pull a little venture mindset. I'm gonna have to sneak out of here, but
okay. Ray is going to the other side of the world. Safe travels, Ray, and thank you for spending as much time as you could with us from SFO.
We're gonna have an amazing guest, Mike, and the rituals are everything. It's gonna be awesome to hear. So I'll leave you with Mike.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Ray. All right. Hello, Michael. Great. Thanks for joining us on Disrupt. Michael Norton, author of The Ritual Effect. From Habit to Ritual, Harness the Surprising Power of Everyday Actions. The Ritual Effect reminds us of the intention-filled acts that drive human behavior and create surprising satisfaction and enjoyment. Michael's professor of business administration at Harvard Business School. Michael's research on topics ranging from hazard of humble bragging, I've been known to humble brag once in a while, to the reports of matchmaking and volunteering, has been published in top academic journals as well as popular media outlets like Wall Street Journal, CNN, Forbes, New York Times, and others. Michael co-authored Happy Money with Elizabeth Dunn, which was named by the Washington Post as a book every leader should read. Welcome, Michael, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on.
It's great to have you. Okay. Let's define rituals. What does it mean to adopt and have a ritual?
Can I ask you a very silly question?
Sure.
So in the morning, when you're getting ready, do you shower and then brush your teeth, or do you brush your teeth and then shower?
I brush my teeth and then shower.
You brush your teeth.
And then I shave after the shower. I find, I don't know if it's sensitive skin or I just feel it for me, it feels better to shave after the shower.
Got it. And how would you feel if I asked you tomorrow to switch the order of all of that?
Because you're a best-selling author and a professor at one of the most important prestigious universities in the world, I would probably try it. And only because, so if it was some stranger at a restaurant or whatever, it was a random collision, I may ignore. But you're someone who's trying to put a ding in the universe, as Steve Jobs said. So I would try it.
And how do you think you would feel? Would it be fine, or would you feel a little something if you switched it up?
After I brush my teeth, I kind of use the power wash to rinse. I don't know. It's a ritual I've had for many, many years.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how I would feel when I would change this routine that's been part of how I start my morning for years, decades maybe.
What's so interesting is first off, do you brush and shower, then brush? About half of humans do it one way and half do it the other way.
Okay. So there is no good, better, best.
Humans have not figured out the correct order of these two things, which is in and of itself I thought was interesting. But the bigger thing is about half of people, if I say switch it up tomorrow, about half of people say, sure, no problem. I don't care what order I do stuff. And I just got to get this stuff done. That's fine.
Yeah.
But about half of people say no. And if I say, why not? They say, I would feel weird. I would feel off. I would feel like I wasn't ready to start my day. And those two kinds of people, one of which is, I don't care. And the other one is, I care a lot. That's a little bit kind of the difference between a habit routine versus a ritual. Habits and routines, they're stuff that we get done. We need to get it done. We might do it in a certain order, but we don't really care. I got to shower, I got to brush my teeth. I could do it this way, I could do it that way. Tasks to be done. Rituals start to be not just what we're doing, but how we do them. And as soon as we start to care about how we do things, and they start to provoke emotion in us, I would feel weird if I had to do it differently. I will feel good if I do it my way. We're moving a little toward boring, dry habit, a little bit toward a ritual. Not ritual like people in robes with candles. That's further down. But a little bit when there's meaning and emotion and these otherwise trivial actions, we see that people can imbue them with that. And then they become a little bit less of a habit and a little bit more of a meaningful ritual.
Okay, that's great. So recently, so I want to be more hydrated throughout the day. So I want to drink more water. Recently, I found that when I'm behind my computer, if I have a bottle of water or a drink in front of me, it acts like a prompt. It reminds me that, hey, you should have 6 or 7 of these cups a day. So is this, and because I recognize late in life the importance of drinking more and staying hydrated. Yeah. So it's more meaningful to me. It's more deliberate. I don't really think too much about brushing. I don't know why. I probably should. If my mom and dad were here, my mom for sure, I would say, you're not spending enough time in circular motion and weighing the back,
She failed as a mother.
Yeah. So is the prompt or having water near me, is this more leaning towards a ritual versus a habit?
Even with something like, so for example, if you talk to athletes who drink a lot of water, they can either drink a lot of water to hydrate, or they'll say, you know what, before every match or every game, what I need to do is 20 minutes before it starts, I have to drink this amount of water. Then I need to do this, then this, and then I have 2 more sips of water and spit them out. That's when we start to see that it's still water. They're still hydrating just like you are, but it's also doing something else for them. They need to do it at this time. The number of times they do it matters to them. And again, that's when, if I say, well, you have to wait till 19 minutes before, they are freaked out. I can't, I'm going to blow the entire game if I can't do it 20 minutes before. Really, really calm athletes, performers, celebrities. If you think of an athlete you like, put their name in and then type ritual and then search. It is astonishing how many of them have these kinds of pre-performance rituals that really, really matter to them. So we don't usually have that elaborate ones because our lives aren't that stressful or important. But even we sometimes have these little things that we just like to do in this particular way.
Is this a ritual signature? Is there a particular pattern that they're following? Because I watch the Celtics are in the finals. I used to play basketball, even though that's hard to imagine when you look at me now. But when you see Kyrie Irving coming into the TD Garden with a basketball in his hand, spinning it in his hand, or when you watch free throw shooters, every free throw shoot, every player has a different signature in terms of how many bounces, how they rope spin the ball, what they're looking at, even the motion and release. So is it fair to say, we're now speaking about professional athletes, so the greatest, most disciplined, most accomplished human beings. do you need to have a ritual signature that's very precise and practice over time to achieve your full potential?
I think there's two important things there. One is when people think about the word ritual, they tend to think of kind of rituals that they received, holidays and religious traditions that have been around, and your parents show you how to do it, and then you do it that way. And those are incredibly meaningful in our lives. I don't mean to say that they're not, but there's this other kind that we do that we're kind of freelancing. There's no ancient text that says spin the basketball 3 times before you take a free throw. There was no basketball. So in there, we're not drawing on an ancient text. We ourselves, in the moment often, are coming up with something ritualistic, in this case, to try to help us with our stress and anxiety. So we see very often that the things are similar. I mean, in any case, the basketball player is using a basketball. A tennis player before they're serving is using a tennis ball. But then they come up with their own idiosyncratic number of bounces, number of whatever it is. And that's kind of like our ritual signature. We're not stuck with only the kind that we receive. We also can create our own all the time. And what we see when we ask people in so many domains of life, they're constantly freelancing and coming up with new ones for themselves.
Again, I'm sticking to basketball analogy, but I remember Larry Bird decided one game he was going to shoot lefty and ended up scoring 40 some odd points. I remember Michael Jordan on a free throw line talking to Mutombo and closing his eyes and shooting a free throw and getting it. In basketball, coaches that I've had in the past talked about developing a muscle memory, and it was all about repetition. It was all about effort. It was all about focus. How do you advise people to not quickly develop rituals that can impact them positively, but is there certain things that, for our audience, it's Friday, what can they do this weekend, next week? And do you need to do it 10,000 hours? Do you have to do the Gladwell long journey before a ritual actually has meaningful impact on your life? Give us a shortcut to how we can implement rituals, and maybe there isn't.
It's a great question. So I think some rituals benefit from repetition, and some don't exactly. So for example, a wedding is a ritual. Every culture has their own version of it, but all cultures have it. But we don't tend to repeat it. Or hopefully we don't do it too many times in our lives. We kind of hopefully do it once, maybe. We're not like, I should do that every single day from now on to get married to a new person, so I'm really good at it. Those kinds of rituals we obviously don't repeat. It's often the kind that you're mentioning and we're talking about are these little ones that people come up with themselves. I mean, the reason I asked about brushing your teeth and showering is what could be more trivial than that? And yet even there, people will say, and you said, I've been doing it this way for years. So we have this sense of almost like a history of our rituals. And when we ask people, they say, the fact that I've been doing it for a long time does give it more meaning for me. It actually makes me feel even more like I'm ready to go. There's a great quote from Rafael Nadal, who you have to, if you have not seen it, watch his pre-serve ritual. It's one of the most spectacular in the world. It includes him picking his wedgie, if you're interested in that, like an amazing thing. And what he says is, I know I don't need to do it, meaning he's still Rafael Nadal. He's going to serve pretty well. But he says, I know I don't need to do it, but when I do it, I feel ready to go. And that's often the property that we see is when people repeat these over time. It's not that if I copy his ritual, I'm not going to be as good as him. That's not how they work, right? But they're helping him get out of his own way so that he can perform at his potential. And that's what people often tell us they use them for is, I got a big presentation at work, big meeting at work. People say, what I do is I go in the bathroom, make sure nobody's there and talk to myself in the mirror for a little while so that I've got, I feel like I've got it. Yeah. Crazy thing to do. And yet so many people do it. You say, I wonder if there's something to that, that I wonder if it actually does help them feel like they're ready to lead the meeting or give the presentation.
That's a great reminder to me. I have the fortune of being able to be invited to present to very large audiences. And what people don't realize is I have a hard time sleeping the night before. I'm not comfortable. I'm not trained to be a professional speaker. My book, my blogs, my presence on social gives people a false understanding that this person is super happy doing this. And I got to tell you, I'm super nervous and I don't have a ritual. And people will tell me, do the Amy Cuddy power pose in a private, in the restroom before you go on stage. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. I haven't found something that puts my mind at ease. So I'm going to double down on your book and find a ritual. My question regarding rituals and relationships, I work for a company that's in the CRM business. The R is relationships. And I think great companies focus deliberately on healthy relationship where the marriage experience is better than the courtship experience.
Yeah.
The real game begins after the sale is done. So you've done a survey and you talk about 75% of people that have healthy relationships have relationship rituals. Advice to startup founders, like our first guest on the show, Dom, or business leaders running large enterprises like my company, Salesforce. How do we create rituals that can enrich our relationships with all stakeholders, our employees, our customers, our partners, our communities we serve? By the way, we could speak probably on this topic for an hour. So, but
right.
some relationship rituals where you can earn trust in a meaningful way, in a sustainable way.
One thing, so we've looked at the role of rituals, for example, in teams at work. And one thing that is an immediate reaction if I go talk to a company is eye rolls. In other words, if I say, hey, we're going to come up with a ritual and you're all going to do it every morning from now on, employees are like, oh my God. I mean, their worst nightmare manager is the manager that sees a TED Talk over the weekend and comes in Monday morning and says, now we got to do this thing. And so
everyone, Simon Sinek, know the why.
Completely. And then the next week it's something else because they saw it on TED Talk or the different podcast or whatever. I mean, that's just like the worst manager. And so, I mean, they might like them, but they don't, whatever. Yeah. And I think that's super important because those kind can backfire. So if I go to company, so what people often say, CEOs will say, can you give me the ritual that they should do? You know what I mean? Why don't you just give it to me and we'll roll it out? And what I say is, we can do that, but I'm telling you, you're going to get eye rolls and resistance. And when we do the research, what we see is we'll ask teams, we don't say, do you have a ritual? Because they're thinking of, people in robes with candles. But we say, does your team have anything that you do that's special, that's unique to your team, that you make sure to do every so often, every day, every week, every month? Many, many teams say they do, and they don't report the corporate ones. They report ones that the team came up with themselves. There was a team, I don't know why this one always strikes me, but it really does. There was a team that said, yes, we have one. What it is one day of the week, each person is responsible for lunch. They buy lunch and bring it for the whole team. And you get 1 day per week. It's just lunch. I mean, it's just brushing your teeth. These things are boring, right? But what they've done is they've changed lunch into, on 1 day of the week, I take care of everyone on my team. And every other day of the week, my team takes care of me. And it became incredibly important to them. It came from them. It wasn't corporate saying, you have to go buy lunch for everybody today, because that feels very different. And in fact, what I encourage leaders to do is not mandate them, but provide space for teams to come up with them. It actually is quite fun for teams. If I say, do you have any inside jokes? Do you have any things you do to start meetings, end meetings? Tell me about your team. And they'll say, well, actually, we do this kind of funny thing. And I say, let's try to do it regularly. Let's build it in as a ritual for your team. And those are the ones where they say, you know what, we've been doing, sometimes they're like, we've been doing this for 10 years, every meeting. And it really means a lot to us, that we keep doing this. And when new people come in, we teach it to them, I mean, it's a way to kind of bring people into the team as well. Do they improve performance 6,000%? I doubt it. Do they actually change the meaning that people see in their work? Well, that we can actually see in our research. People see those rituals as meaningful. They see their teams as meaningful. And that translates a little bit to seeing the actual work they're doing as more meaningful. So they do have a real impact on how we're thinking about our coworkers and our work.
That's awesome. So when I listen to you and I try to create a kind of a composable, so there's a level of authenticity because it's grassroots and consensus and it's not coming from the top down. There's observability the element of the ritual because you have the lunch. You see the servant leadership that 1 day where you're serving the team and vice versa. And there's repeatability. So authenticity, observability, and repeatability seem to be elements for rituals to stick. Is that a fair assessment of what I'm hearing?
For sure. And I mean, another team, for example, when the pandemic, people had to work from home. On one end, you could say, well, nobody's going to do any rituals anymore because we're on Zoom. And instead, what teams did is come up with new ones on Zoom. And there was one team, for example, that at the beginning of every Zoom meeting, everyone just clicked the emoji that reflected how they were feeling. So you get right away a overall sense of how the team is doing, and a little bit, maybe I should follow up with that person because they're struggling. And they started doing it before every single Zoom meeting regularly. And they hadn't done it in person. When they were together, nobody asked how anybody was feeling. So actually the technology allowed them to come up with a new ritual that they then felt, this is really meaningful. This really shows that we care about each other. Let's do it at the beginning of every single meeting.
That's awesome. My last question, and I'm sorry, I'm asking you questions that are just all over the place. It seems a pretty powerful topic. And when I reflect on where I am now, I realize it's the decisions I made 5 to 10 years ago that led to where I am now. Like writing, for example. I deliberately chose 10 years ago to write more, create more content, and I was the first evangelist hired at Salesforce. So I'm thinking the decisions I'm making right now as we speak is probably which is gonna lead me to where I'm gonna be 5 to 10 years from now. You're a multi-best-selling author. What rituals did you have 5, 10 years ago that led to the success you have now? And have you adopted any new rituals as a result of writing another great book, as a result of teaching the best and brightest students in the world, that you think will have an inflection point or great impact where you're going to be a decade from now?
In my lab group at Harvard, where it's some other faculty, some postdocs, and some graduate students, a bunch of really smart, really nice people. For me, the most important thing is creativity, is idea generation. And what we do in our lab is, you could do anything you want with a team. You can do any ritual you want. What we do is we have a day that's called Random Ideas Day, when you have to bring in an idea about humans, whatever, no constraints, an insight about humans, and you're not allowed to then study it. Those are the rules. And the idea is we're just saying ideas in and of themselves are incredibly valuable. Sometimes we'll do things like pull Beatles song titles out of a hat, come up with a project based on that. And you're not allowed to study that either. And we're really trying with these little rituals to reinforce the idea that the number one value of our lab group is creativity and idea generation. You can be good at math and all that other stuff. That's important as well. But through our rituals, we're trying to show this is the value that really matters to us.
I'm Boston-based. I should take your course. Staying teachable is so much harder when you get older. And when I listen to big brains like yourself that expand my mind in 20 minutes, the inside voice is like, you need to get back into school. And my mom would be proud. Brushing better. We're here with Mike Norton. Thank you so much for an incredible segment. We could have talked to you for the entire hour, and congratulations on the book, and hope our paths cross in person at some point. So thank you so much, Mike.
I hope so too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. This is where this is the end of the show where I normally go to Ray, because my brain is moving so fast, and I kind of lean into my co-host to summarize the show. It's wonderful to understand that the biggest influence in life is habits and rituals. If you want better outcomes, better results, it's important to develop better rituals. And to do that, you have to have that experimental mindset. And remember, if you know the outcome, it's not an experiment. So to truly have an experimental mindset, you really don't know the outcome. This is having a beginner's mindset. This is having courage. This is having confidence in yourself to take risks. And the more risks you take, calculated risks, learning from mistakes. The second time you make the same exact mistake is called a choice. So I think the smartest people I know, they make original mistakes. Therefore, they recognize that a mistake is your greatest teacher. And if you have that mindset, you can be more adaptable, more flexibility. There's more elasticity in terms of your willingness to take risks. And that's the venture mindset. And of course, Dom reminded us that in a world where threat vectors are growing, the impact of AI, the impact of a more hyper-connected knowledge-sharing economy that's more decentralized, we have to have security as part of our design processes from the get-go. And that's the hardware, the software, and all the components that make up the value chain, where security is not just an afterthought, because at that point, it's too late. And at this point, it's brand reputational damage that could impact your company in the most significant way. So, I can't be Ray summarizing the 1 hour episode as well as he can. So thanks, Ray. Never leave me alone again. And thank you all for watching. Next week, we have Chris Lockheed, 13-time #1 best-selling author, co-author of #1 Charting Business Dialogue, podcaster, co-creator of Category Pirates, and someone who's best known as the godfather of category design. So he has the #1 podcast and 13 best-selling books. Always a pleasure to learn from Chris Lockheed. And then Matt Bean, who's the author of The Skill Code, a book called Skill Code, how to save human ability in the age of artificial and intelligent machines. So a great show next week. Buckle your seatbelts, get your popcorn ready. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.